Ladies and gentlemen, I have been requested by many to tell just how I knocked out so many of my opponents. As far as I'm concerned, that day has gone. And today, I have a new way in knocking them out. And I will show you.
This is Jack Johnson, one of the most controversial fighters in the history of boxing. Many consider him the greatest heavyweight ever, certainly in the same class with Jack Dempsey, Joe Louis, and Muhammad Ali. On December 26, 1908, after trying for years to get a title bout, his wish would come true, meeting champion Tommy Burns in Sydney, Australia. Johnson gives Burns a terrible beating, so bad that in the 14th round, with Burns on the verge of being knocked out, police stopped the cameramen from filming. A few seconds after this last frame of film, the referee stops the fight. Jack Johnson is the heavyweight champion of the world.
He was the first black title holder. He also went out with white women. He taunted his white opponents. He was very bold. He followed Tommy Burns all the way to Australia to force him to fight him. When he won, he kind of boasted. And it was felt in the United States and other white countries that Jack Johnson represented something very evil.
The famed author Jack London covered the Johnson-Burns fight for the New York Herald. His column was venomous, with each paragraph showing his distaste that a black man could defeat a white man. He called for a white hope. The former revered champion Jim Jeffries, who had retired undefeated 3 years earlier to his farm in California. Wrote London, "One thing is certain. Jim Jeffries must emerge from his alfalfa farm and remove the golden smile from Jack Johnson's face. Jeff, it is up to you." The reference to Johnson's golden smile was not misunderstood. Johnson had replaced his front teeth with gold ones.
This is the Jack London we all grew up loving, reading White Fang and Call of the Wild and all such things. There were all kinds of racist songs composed and played in dance halls and burlesque places in praise of Jeffries. There was vicious press about Jack Johnson. This was yet another one of those times where history and boxing, and specifically the heavyweight championship, intersected in the most interesting and electrifying way.
America went on Jack London's bandwagon. The call for a white champion, a great white hope, spanned the United States.
You had rodeo riders and gandy dancers and track walkers and circus freaks all showing up to become the white champion. It was a promoter's dream. Everybody was a white champion.
The year after he won the title, Johnson was challenged by middleweight champion Stanley Ketchel, the Michigan Assassin. Ketchel, who some considered the greatest middleweight of all time, was 35 pounds lighter than Johnson, but had a tremendous punch. For 11 rounds, Ketchel puts up a courageous performance. In the 12th round, Ketchel shocks the screaming fans by knocking down Johnson. It takes but a moment for Ketchel to realize his mistake. Quickly getting to his feet, Johnson lets loose with a tremendous right hand to the jaw. The fight is over. Ketchel's career would end a year later when he was murdered at the age of 24. Johnson flaunted his victories, and the cry throughout the country was again aimed at Jim Jeffries as the ultimate white hope. Finally, Jeffries succumbed. He agreed to come out of retirement and fight for the honor of the white race. A little more than 5 years after he had retired, Jeffries, wearing a gray suit and white cap, steps into the ring. In Jeffries' corner, urging him on, is former champion James J. Corbett, a boxing legend. Said Gentleman Jim before the fight, "The black boy has a yellow streak, and Jeffries will bring it out of him when he gets him in the ring." Once the fight starts, Corbett, in the safety of his corner, screams insults at Johnson. With every insult, Johnson retaliates on the face and body of Jeffries. Between punches, Johnson would continue his verbal challenge to the hysterical Corbett.
Johnson spent half his time saying, "Come on in, Mr. Jim, you want the same thing. You want some of this? Come on in, Mr. Jim. You're next." He really didn't care. He could have beaten everybody in the crowd that afternoon.
The bout is scheduled for 45 rounds, but it is evident by the 12th round that Jeffries is not the fighter of old. The 5-year retirement and having to lose close to 100 pounds are coming back to haunt him. Finally, in the 15th round, Johnson decides to end it. He sends the exhausted Jeffries sprawling to the canvas, taunting him to get up. Johnson puts him down again. These are the first knockdowns Jeffries has suffered during his career. Jeffries is helpless. His cornermen illegally assist him to his feet. Jeffries is finished. Rather than see their fallen idol counted out, Jim Corbett tells the referee Tex Rickard to stop the fight. Egged on by the press, Johnson's victory caused race riots throughout the country.
It was not so distant from slave times and Reconstruction. There were riots in every major city that one could think of the minute the news of Jack Johnson's victory was announced.
Revenge was the order of the day. If there were no white hopes available to crush Johnson, the American legal system became a convenient alternative. Johnson was convicted of transporting a woman across state lines for immoral purposes. Faced with spending time in prison, he fled the country.
Jack Johnson was one of the most culturally sophisticated figures in the history of boxing. Knew about music and theater and had a taste for fine wines and spoke French and Spanish and read widely. He was very sophisticated.
Unable to fight in the United States, Johnson put his title on the line in Havana, Cuba against Jess Willard, a towering 6-foot, 6-inch giant. The 37-year-old Johnson is but a shell of his former self. Willard knocks him out in the 26th round. Later, Johnson claimed he threw the fight, showing as evidence the famous photo of him shielding his eyes from the sun as the referee counted him out. Few experts believed his story. Finally, in 1920, 5 years after losing the title, Johnson returned to the United States and surrendered to federal authorities. He served 8 months in a federal prison. He retired from the ring in 1928 when he was 50 years old.
Jack Johnson just was what society couldn't take, a burr under its Victorian saddle. Jack Johnson loved to beat the white man, to infuriate the writers, to race cars at outrageous speeds, to open a club, Cafe Chicago, that served liquor anytime, anywhere, anyhow, all against the law, and just to go on as merry, having a good time